Welcome to another episode of the Fourmation Podcast. As always, I'm George, and today I'm joined by
Harry,
Sam,
and Devon.
And we really have mastered that little intro. 5 episodes in, haven't we? This is episode 5 of the podcast, and we've got a lot to discuss today. There's been some more Bundesliga action, which we should probably get into. There's a bit more news on the Premier League. We've got some transfer rumours as well as a managerial change, which is set to take place in the coming days. But first, you might have seen earlier this week, we did a special preview for Der Klassiker. Borussia Dortmund took on Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, a big game at the top of the table. We were all excited for it, expecting a real spectacle. Expecting a spectacle. What a choice of words that is. Sam, do you think it lived up to the expectation?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Obviously, I was expecting more goals, but it is what it is. You know, they both got great attacks, but they both got great defensive lines at the same time. There was a lot of, obviously, plot lines that still came from it with the VAR. Erling Haaland having one of his worst games, one of his slower games that he's had in such an amazing young career so far. And obviously, Dortmund well on their way to capturing that 30th Bundesliga title, which is an 8th in a row, which is just immense.
We should mention as well, you said not many goals. We haven't mentioned the result yet. It finished 1-0 to Bayern. They're the first team this season, I believe, to stop Dortmund scoring at home. And it was Kimmich's goal, which was the difference. Harry, that goal was worthy of winning any game, wasn't it? That's another cliche. I'm sorry.
Billa's going to have you, George.
Especially from a defensive midfielder as well. And the ego to try chip from there when the keeper's only a couple of feet off his line. People might be saying the goalkeeper may have been able to do it better because there's no power on the shot. Like he would have struggled to push it over the bar because there wasn't enough power to then bounce off his glove and flick it over. So maybe a better goalkeeper, if he was in a better position, could have done well. But yeah, focusing on just the goal, the attempts, the execution, it was all worth a match-winning goal, really.
I think with Berkey, we're just like you've said, it was just the quality of the shot. It was so unexpected as well, and as a goalkeeper, you've got that reaction time to think, "Oh my God, he's tried it," and then you realise Berkey's too far off his line, and he's scrambling from the off. And even if he were for a couple of, he'd be able to generate the power to push it over if he was a couple of inches back, but because he's already scrambling and is falling as he's pushed himself, it were never gonna go over the bar, and even if he did get his hand to it.
I think Kimmich mentioned after the game that they pointed out that Berkey likes to stand off his line a lot, even when the ball's in play close to him. So I think Kimmich was very smart and aware to see that. And Owen Hargreaves, to his credit, put it well. He said that he didn't think any other CDM in world football would try something like that, and it's probably true. It shows, it's a testament to the confidence in Kimmich's ability that he has.
I think it's that goal that epitomises the confidence that that Bayern had against Dortmund. You saw in the first 15 minutes, it was high intensity from Dortmund. They went really at Bayern, expecting, they could have got one or two. You never know. With a bit more composure from Haaland, but I think it's that the level that they knew that they were going to come at them. If they survived that first 15 minutes, they probably would go on to win it. You just look at the stature of the players. Is that every single one of them is like being moulded into a born winner in that league, and they were, after that first 15 minutes, it seemed just inevitable that Bayern were going to score. There were a couple of moments. We mentioned that Berkey didn't save it, but one good save from Jerome Boateng from Erling Haaland. I've got no idea how that didn't go to VAR.
I agree. It was fairly baffling, wasn't it? In the referee's defence, I'm not trying to excuse it. I don't think anyone thought it was handball when the shot originally went in, but when they've got access to those replays, and it was pretty clear, if you haven't watched it, Boateng was on the floor, moved his arm towards the ball. It was kind of, his elbow, wasn't it? But it was this.
It was very much away, very much away from his body. So
yeah,
definitely a natural movement. So I don't see why that wasn't looked at all.
I think the only excuse he might have is because he's twisting his body. If he tries to move his arm out of the way, he's literally going to land on the floor like that. So what he's trying to do is keep himself upright and go like that. I think it should have been a penalty because he's quite clearly blocks the ball. But I'm trying to look from the VAR sort of referee perspective, and the only reason why I think they haven't given it is because otherwise he'd have landed quite an odd way if he just put his hands behind his back and just let himself fall to try and block the ball.
That sounds like a Dominic Cummings excuse for why he did it. I totally disagree. I think even if it had felt like with his arms behind his back, it'd been natural, and it'd be, especially as a footballer, you've got to keep your arms in tight, especially when something like that's going to happen. And
Phil Jones now has to make it look natural.
Yeah. The beautiful features on his face as a ball comes hurtling towards him. It's something else. But again, this probably confirms the kind of study that we have seen of the end of the home advantage. Obviously, Dortmund weren't backed by the yellow wall as they normally would, and it seemed to calm Bayern down, sort of like they've already mentally blocked their that sound out, and they just allowed them to play their own game. And I suppose when you can actually hear players, like at Sunday League level, one to another, it makes that movement and the game plan easy to pass around.
Oh yeah, it definitely had an impact, I think, because in huge games like that, you'll see it every time. Fans will try and just get on top of the opposition. They'll boo their every touch. Bayern have got one or two ex-Dortmund players in their ranks, so they might try and intimidate them. Of course they might. So yeah, without that, I think they definitely suffered. What we should say as well, that now extends Bayern's lead at the top to 7 points. Is the title race over, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. We have to give a lot of credit to Hansi Flick, obviously, who's taken the reins at Bayern Munich. He took the reins at Bayern Munich in November after a tumultuous end to Niko Kovac's reign. Obviously, they lost 5-1 to Frankfurt, and then he was sacked. They were 4 points off the pace. But now, in 24 games under Flick, they've won 21 of them, scored 75 and conceded just 16. So it's a testament to how he's turned things around there. Got the belief back in this team that's won 7 titles in a row and is very much on its way to its 8th.
Anything else to add on that game, guys?
The only thing that I would say is Dortmund weren't allowed to play their normal game because of the advantage that Bayern had in the league. And what I mean by that is that sort of Bayern are in the driving seat, so Dortmund had to come to play to them rather than the other way around because Dortmund needed the point, and Bayern Munich, they could have taken a point and they still would have been 4 points clear. So I think that's quite a big reason why both teams were quite cautious, because if one team made a mistake, that would either let Bayern back into that would win Bayern the title, or it'd let Dortmund back into the title race, sort of thing. So I think Bayern played their cards very well against Dortmund.
I'd also like to mention, when we did the preview, we focused a lot of emphasis on Haaland and Lewandowski. One of them was woeful, the other one was very quiet, and but the big talking point from that preview was whether Sancho would have started, and even though when he came on he didn't really make an impact, and Dortmund really seemed to have burnt out by then. I think that game against Wolfsburg really probably took the wind out of them, and it showed in that second half, just because that extra 10% they weren't putting that in, and they looked like they'd resigned to a defeat on the 50th minute mark for some reason. But do you think Sancho starting may have, with a point to prove especially, aided Dortmund's first 15 minutes? And as well, do you think the absence of Emir Can or Witsel in midfield alongside Delaney or De Hood was also a component in Bayern cutting through that midfield half of the time?
I think it was purely a fitness thing with Sancho. I think Lucien Favre said he'd only been training with the team 10 days prior to the game. So I think it was purely down to fitness. I don't think Favre was 100% certain that Sancho would be able to see out maybe a full 90 minutes to the top of his game. So I don't think it would have made too much of a difference if he started the game, to be honest.
I think with the midfield issue you mentioned as well, I think Chan came on at half time, didn't he? And I don't think Dortmund looked necessarily weak in midfield in the first half. I think there was some really tenacious football being played, and I don't think they were lacking in that area. But Bayern just had a bit more cutting edge, as we mentioned. If we move on, another team who were kind of had slim hopes of a title push and had been in really good form, by Leverkusen. On Tuesday night, they played Wolfsburg and they lost 4-1 at home. Harry, did anyone see this collapse coming?
Well, I said that I liked Wolfsburg, but I didn't like them that much. I thought they might cause a good result here or there, but I was looking at my phone when they're 3-0 up, and I was in shock, to be honest with you, because how good Leverkusen have been, especially with Diaby. Darren Mabay's had a good season, as well as Kai Havertz, and all of them just sort of they didn't really do anything. I think they had 9 shots in the entire game. They weren't their usual self, and Wolfsburg, to their credit, were able to counter that and got 4 goals without replying until the 85th minute.
Yeah, when I watched the highlights, it was clear how Wolfsburg got the goals. There's just so many gaps opening up every time in Leverkusen's defence, especially at set pieces with the 2-headed goals from the centre back. I can't remember his name, but he got 2 from very similar sort of free kicks. First from the right hand side in the first half, and then from the right hand side again in the second half, whipping into the box, and it was unmarked to both of them. There's so many gaps opening up, which is very surprising to see a team like Leverkusen who've been so solid, especially after the restart.
I think the player that you're referring to is I'm going to try and pronounce it. Grasic. 2 commanding headers, but like you said, there was no one around him to even put him off. Another one, 5'6" Renato Stefan as well at the back post. That were just how easy Bayer Leverkusen were cut through in each of the attacks. Even the Arnold free kick, even though it was a deflection, and there's not much you can do when it happens like that. They just seemed like they had again resigned to defeat as soon as they went 1-0 down. They'd clearly seen the faults that Leverkusen had in the last 2 games. And don't get me wrong, the last 2 games have been phenomenal with some of the players and Kai Havertz, and they really limited them sort of players getting on the ball and expressing themselves. And it took a defensive midfielder to actually break Wolfsburg, and it was just like a snatch and grab then, and game were already gone. Obviously, with only 5 minutes left. But yeah, Leverkusen are a good team. They just need to probably focus more on the defence going forward, unless they lose key players going forward.
So that was their first defeat since February the 1st, Leverkusen. Do you think they can beat Mönchengladbach to 4th spot? Do you think that one might go far into the end of the season?
I think Gladbach looks strong as well. There's a lot of good teams. It just depends how many. I can't put my finger on it. It's just so unpredictable at the minute. Teams are getting results when they shouldn't get results, or we coming into this, we thought Schalke were going to put up more of a fight, and they've lost all 3 of their games, and Wagner's coming to question. But I think it's certainly going to be a good fight between them. Even Dortmund might get dragged back into it because of that defeat, and if that knocks their confidence, and follow it up. But I mean, they've got Paderborn, which could be not an easy game, but a good game to bounce back from.
Like I say, you could throw Dortmund into that mix. There's only 4 points separating them and Leverkusen in 5th. So I think that's the race to look out for now. The title race pretty much gone. There's a couple of very good teams in there that are vying for those spots.
And Leipzig too, of course, on Wednesday night, they drew 2-2 with Hertha Berlin. Hertha Berlin did go into it in good form, having won their previous two, but Leipzig have drawn their last two at home. Will they be disappointed with last night's result?
I think it was a good game between two good sides. I think Hertha will be happy because they contained them key players. Werner, as soon as he got on the ball, people were closing him down, making sure that he was limited to his kind of free attacking role that he likes to, move from either wing whilst being through in the middle. But I think it were a game of a few mistakes, really, that led to goals. But I think if Hertha would have scored a little bit earlier, then they might have gone on to win it, especially with the one-man advantage. But I think it were overall quite a good game to watch.
Obviously, you mentioned the lack of a home advantage during this restart, but drawing at home has been a problem for Leipzig even before the restart. I think that was their 10th draw of the season, the third or fourth in a row at home. So it's been a big problem for them, maybe trying to break down the smaller teams at home.
You mentioned mistakes, Devon. Leipzig's second goal. The ball slipped through the hands of Rune Jahrstein in the Berlin net. Did it remind any of you of a Sunday League sort of mistake? Because it definitely did to me. Harry, what did you make of it?
I had to watch it a few times because I didn't know if he sort of saved it into his net or then he saved it and accidentally punched it. It was an odd one. Don't get me wrong. If I scored that or cancelled own goal, but if I took the shot, I'd certainly be claiming it. But it's at that point you probably thought, well, Leipzig have got this, and somehow once again they've not been able to get the win, and that's sort of the problem that I had, or that's the concern that I had at the start when we started, that the teams below Bayern Munich was faulted to these inconsistencies. And don't get me wrong, Dortmund lost to a better team in Bayern Munich, so they can't really pin them on it. But the teams like Leipzig, the teams like Leverkusen, they can't keep up because they will lose against teams either around them or below them, whereas Bayern Munich just, whatever it is, however it is, like all the wins so far that they've had since the return, they've not been pretty. Or at least the first and the third one haven't been pretty, but they just get the job done.
I was Rob Green against USA popped to my mind just now when thinking that goalkeeper mistake again.
I'm just thinking about the amount of cock-ups that I've had at Sunday League level. It's it's about preparation. I think goalkeepers have missed that kind of one-on-one and play, because obviously you've got first team keeper, then you've normally got a youth keeper joining by a reserve keeper, and you're in that kind of 4 or 5 position where you've close contact training, and because they've not had that over a prolonged time, I think it has affected a lot of the goalkeepers, because we've seen a lot of mistakes in the last 2 weeks, which, when we get onto the Premier League later and Championship, if they come back, we might potentially see goalkeepers producing these kind of mistakes unless contact training is allowed to continue for a longer time. But obviously we'll get onto that in a bit.
We should probably mention before we move on, Schalke, Devon, you already touched on them. 3 defeats on the spin since returning from the lockdown period, and is it 9 without a win in total if we go further?
They've only won once in 2020.
Yeah, it's really not going well. On Saturday, they play Werder Bremen at home, who have the last couple of games, they've looked maybe a little bit stronger. But will this game be kind of the last chance saloon for David Wagner?
Yeah, I think you get a sense of his team and style in that in his last few matches at Huddersfield. A team, deprived of confidence, a team that doesn't look like they could, even buy a win. And even though they went 1-0 up, I think they're like a kid in a sweet shop. They were too giddy and they're like, oh, we've scored. But before they knew it, Dusseldorf have already got back into it, and then obviously done the most Daniel Varga thing, which is letting them back in, very quickly. There were only 5 minutes between both goals, and then Schalke have slipped to another defeat. I think next season we'll see a few changes. Like I don't think Wagner will survive. Lucien Favre's contract may not get renewed, and I think as a result, it's not a good time in the circumstances now. But we're getting a true reflection of some of the teams and the management skills that are in place.
Other games on the weekend which are probably worthy of a mention. You already said Dortmund are going to Paderborn on Sunday afternoon. They'll have to deal with Dennis Sabani there, who scored a lovely goal. So you'd expect them to win that game. Bayern as well, they play Dusseldorf at home. Surely they'll take another step towards their title there, do you think?
Yeah, I think if Dortmund were to win, I think a team like Dusseldorf is a perfect bounce back for Bayern. If they had someone like Leipzig next and Dortmund did beat them, then it'd really ramp up the pressure on. But I think even if Dortmund did win, I think Bayern would continue their dominance, especially with, we were talking about, is it Leverkusen they've got in a few weeks, but with a frail weekend. So if a team as good as Wolfsburg are, if they're coming up and play against Bayern the way they played against Wolfsburg, they're going to get absolutely smashed. So I think Bayern would have gone on to win anyway.
So we should probably move on now to the return of football, where we hope the return of football in this country. We've seen various sort of things going around about the Premier League and the Championship over the last week or so. But yesterday, there was another relatively significant announcement. The Premier League and its 22 clubs had a vote on the return of contact training. It was unanimous. So contact training is to resume. Harry, we're just waiting for the confirmed date now, aren't we? And then we can get going again.
Oh, yes. Teams have started refunding season tickets. Troy Deeney said he's going to go back to training. It's all getting closer and closer to returning. And what's really interesting is, will that home and away advantage actually, will there be a home and away advantage?
There's a little, we've not mentioned the little stumbling block that even though, 1,008 players and staff and 4 more individuals have tested positive from 3 sides, which it's always that question of whenever something little happens like that, even though statistically it's a very good percentage that have been tested positive, and they might not even show symptoms. It's just a case of isolating, which for their fitness is putting it on the back burner, but for the health and safety of the group and themselves is needed. But I think if this becomes more than, if it gets into double figures and starts really, duplicating in numbers, I think that's when, again, the Premier League's going to have to say, that's it, that we won't be returning until next season. And then all sorts of lawsuits will start getting thrown about. Everyone will sue, just depending on whatever outcome. But I think trying to restart the Premier League is probably the best and fairest outcome.
Do you think
been a few? Go on.
I was going to say, do you think if there's still, say, 4 every 800 every single week, do you still think the Premier League will return, or do you think they'll go, no, we're going to wait till it's 1 or 2 every 800 tests? Because at the moment there's only 10 or 12 out of the, I think it's 2,700-ish that they've done, which is still a very, very low percentage.
As long as it's not a sign of a spread in one team, then I don't think it'll be a problem. Like you say, it's a very small percentage of tests that have come back positive. 99.5% results have been negative from the ones that they've tested so far. So it's, they're still being cautiously positive, but it's still very encouraging to see that there's not been a huge spread within one team. If it gets to that point, obviously it will become a problem. But I think we're well on the way to seeing the Premier League return.
I think as well, you have to look at as well as the sport news, you have to look at the normal news, and they've been, there's that many different theories and how you get it, and they've said that you have to be in close contact for a number of minutes in order to pass on the virus completely or have a higher dosage. So that meaning, like, if they are marking from corners, it shouldn't be too bad as long as they don't, they touch them and then put the, rub their eye or put it in the mouth. But it's still a positive one. They've said players will train as groups and engage in tackling whilst minimising unnecessary close contact, which again, it's a big step towards that start date.
If Troy Deeney, who was clearly very worried about the health of his son at the start of all this, has been convinced to return to training, I think we can be confident that the conditions that they're training in are very safe. So yeah, I'm happy with the players to return. I'm happy to see that the Premier League are finally taking steps towards returning.
I think as soon as we get to the stage where you can have 11 versus 11, that's when we can really get giddy on this podcast and start preparing for it.
Something we could also maybe get giddy for is there was a potential schedule going around on Twitter yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, of how the games might go ahead. They were saying there's going to be 5 games on the Saturday. It'll be 1 at 12, 1 at 2, 1 at 4, 1 at 6, 1 at 8, all at different times, and then they'll repeat it on the Sunday. Can we watch 5 games in one day? Will that get boring or not?
I've been deprived.
I think the thing is that we've done this at World Cups and watching just 3 games a day. So this is just going to be perfect. I think this is a broadcaster's dream to have all Premier League games on telly at the selected times.
I watched Egypt versus Saudi Arabia as one of like the third of 4 games in a day during the 2018 World Cup. So I'm not bothered.
I remember watching I were in media at college, and I think it was Uruguay versus Egypt, and I had the split screen of my work and the game, and my teacher was helping me, and we were just watching the game for it. I barely got any work done. But yeah, this is for football fans. It's just too exciting. But again, there's been more positive in the Football League as well. 1,014 tests this time, and 2 positive cases came out of that. However, it's just popped up from one journalist who covers Sheffield Wednesday for the Sheffield Star, Alex Miller. He said 3 more EFL players and staff have been tested positive for COVID-19 this week from 2 different clubs. 1,030 people were tested between the 25th and 27th of May, and positive for me, he understands that no Sheffield Wednesday players have tested positive. So not a big step back, but in total, that is, if my maths concern me, it's 5.
How many times do you use the word positive in that sentence?
Gotta stay positive.
That's a nice little link you make there, Devon, to the EFL. We thought there was a meeting going on yesterday between the clubs. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. We haven't heard anything out of it yet, but there was an interesting piece of news related to the EFL yesterday. Nathan Jones is being linked with going back to Luton Town. John Percy from The Telegraph is saying it's very close. If you don't recognise the name Nathan Jones, he was at Luton Town before as manager. He won promotion for them from League 2 to League 1. Then he started League 1 pretty well before leaving for Stoke 16 months ago. It all went wrong at Stoke. He was sacked there last November. How do we feel? He's potentially going back. Devon, what do you think?
I don't like the concept sometimes of old managers going back for a second hurrah.
Tell me about it.
Russell Slade being one of them. But I think it's probably inevitable that Luton are going to drop based on form, and they can't seem to. They'll get a good win somewhere, and then they'll follow that up with 4 defeats. I think if the terms of rebuild, and he can, he gets a chance in League 1 to continue his progress from that stage, then it could be a good fit. But again, there's an area of, especially with some players, is if we're doing well, is he going to again leave us and go to a different club? And I think there's going to be that kind of the atmosphere around the club still going to be that, well, he could just leave us again.
Harry, how do you think the the Luton fans will be feeling about this, because he kind of betrayed them to go to Stoke. He thought it was a bigger club maybe, and now he's coming back because they got rid of him.
Thing is, I don't know how they feel, so I'm not a Luton fan, but if I was them, I think time certainly heals a lot of things. And I was going to take it sort of from a Southampton perspective, and when Koeman left, we were like, whatever, we're noise, we don't like you. But sort of time goes by, and I wouldn't take him now, but if we had Mark Hughes in charge, I'd be like, come, please, quick as you can. So, to be fair, if I was them, all he's done for them at the moment, although he left to go to a bigger club, is good times. And I think they've still got a similar crop of players there that played well under him. So they're proven under his management, and I just want him, even if it is for a short period and he goes off again, which I don't think will happen, because I think he knows maybe that Luton's this level. That might be harsh, but if he's gone to Stoke and he's not done so well, maybe because it's a bigger, higher level of players, bigger egos, I'm not too sure. But I think, he'll go there, and I think he'll do well. And I think the Luton fans, if not on the first day, after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, if it's going well, we'll forget all about the past and go, yes, he's our manager. And I think this time he's here to stay.
I don't think Luton fans are in the position to hold grudges at the moment with the position that they're in the Championship. They're obviously second from bottom. They could still stay up. I mean, they're 6 points off Hull, who are in absolutely catastrophic form, or before the suspension, obviously. So there's still a chance. Maybe if they get that sort of new manager bounce from Jones once again, that they could stay up. I don't think. I guess he was showing a little bit of ambition by going to Stoke in the first place. It didn't work out. Why can't he get a second shot? Luton.
It might be a case of, normally you have that new manager bounce, but it just depends on the type of, because you got to think there's not a massive turnaround in time if we're trying to get the season to start in a few weeks. Is he going to have enough time to be able to implement anything? I suppose you've got that element of Graham Jones, his brother, taking over anyway, and it's probably still a similar system, similar lineup. Not much will change. It's weird. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. Luton, of course, a lot is said about how Kenilworth Road is an old ground. How will they fare there without any fans? It's difficult to know, isn't it? But maybe they'll survive. I don't personally think they will.
I think people around the houses could just open the windows and shout for it,
Very good point.
I think we've seen from the Bundesliga, it doesn't really matter what your ground looks like. The home advantage there isn't one at the moment. What is it? 3 home wins in the Bundesliga?
Yeah, I think there might have been a couple last night. I don't know.
But maybe a ground like Kenilworth Road would be more intimidating, just due to, even with nobody in there, it's still, not the pizzazz of some stadiums, and especially the newer ones. That's why grounds like Oakwell and Hillsborough have a bit more character, in Kenilworth Road as well. Whereas instead of the domes that you get nowadays.
If we move on now to the next section of this week's podcast, we have liked to in the past talk about a few transfer rumours which are going around. We've got a few which we can discuss this week. The Manchester Evening News have reported recently that Odion Ighalo is very keen to stay at Man United. Of course, he was there on loan, joined in January. Do we think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer should maybe be looking for someone more proven than him?
It had a fairly positive impact in his mere few games that he played in. But I think the key for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to be the younger players that will drive Man United for a few years, rather than getting the old experienced players like Ighalo. So I think if they could get him cheaper on a lower wages, then it might be good for a few years. and he might be able to shape someone like Mason Greenwood to fill in that role pretty easily, and a little bit of experience and a little bit of mentorship that can get him into that role. But if I were Ole, I'd be looking elsewhere.
I think they're still viewing him merely as a backup to Rashford. Obviously, Ole is clearly very committed to playing in that front and centre role and leading the line for Manchester United for many years to come. So I think he's, like Devon said, he did a decent job coming off the bench in the short time that he was already there. It's obviously a bit of a weird one with Shanghai wanting him to return, even though foreign nationals aren't allowed into the country at China at the moment. So and his wages at Shanghai are extortionate, and what the reports that they've been offering $400,000 a week. It'll be hard for him to turn that down, I think, but we'll see.
Do you think that with Igalo's rumours really taking a kind of stance, that they want him back or he wants to stay, do you think that kind of differs from what we've been talking about previously with Dembele and Werner or Sancho? Do you think they might have resigned to the fact that they won't have that amount of money, or might be too much?
It's going to be strange to see how much clubs commit to the transfer window with obviously the current situation. But like I said, I think Ole's pretty committed to Rashford as their front man. He was in very good form before his injury, obviously, but he'll be fit in time for the restart, hopefully. So I think for now they're committed to him as their main man. Obviously, I think they'd like to have a guy back as a replacement.
But we also saw Teddy Sheringham a bit earlier this week. He was on Sky Sports' football show on the morning, and he was talking about Harry Kane, and he mentioned how maybe his career is at crossroads at the moment. Harry, do you think Jose Mourinho is capable of getting the best out of him through his style, or should Kane look elsewhere? I think this has been discussed for a few years, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he could get the best out of him, but does getting the best out of him win trophies at a Tottenham size, or does getting not the best out of him, but still a good Harry Kane who's somewhere else, get him to win trophies, if that makes sense? I think Kane said a few months ago that he will only stay at Tottenham if he knows there's a chance in the future, or he can see a future where they're going to win trophies. And at the moment, unless he's going to go for a Europa League, which, is that an elite trophy for a world-class striker? Let's be honest, it's not. So I think, he won't go for as much as he used to be, because I don't think he's athletic. He's still got the physical attributes, but he's not, he's not as good as he used to be, some may say, because of the amount of injuries. So yes, they can get the best out of him still, but I think it'd be better if he moves on, because he needs to win a trophy. Otherwise, a lot of people might see his career as someone that could have done a lot better with the attributes that he had.
Kane's gone.
One point we were all saying in the preview. Obviously, Harry didn't turn up, but when us three were talking, we mentioned that Harry Kane's play style doesn't really fit many other sides. It's unique, and teams may have to change the way they play to suit him for him to score goals. And I think even Mourinho's style at the minute is too direct for him. Where do you think, if he was to move on, would be a good place and a good fit for him?
I think Real Madrid is often the club people link him to. Maybe Man United as well. I don't know. I think if he went to Man United, they would have someone to rely on again, and I think that's maybe what they've been lacking in recent years. Maybe it's Rashford at the moment, but is Rashford good enough to take that on his shoulders? Maybe he will be in a few years. I'm not sure, but I think if Kane goes, Madrid will be the one which appeals to him the most.
Yeah, I think Kane's another awkward one. There's no denying that he's a fantastic striker. Like, his goal record is immense, but Tottenham in recent years have really struggled to find someone who can back him up. And I think the problem has been that knowing that Kane's there and he's going to start pretty much every game for Spurs when he's fit, a lot of the top strikers have been dissuaded to come to Tottenham. So I think Heung-min Son is good enough to lead the team in scoring. So I think it might be best if Harry Kane's really desperate to win trophies, it might be best for him to move on. You mentioned Real Madrid. Karim Benzema's hit form again. They've got Luka Jovic, who didn't have much game time last season, wants to break into the team. So he'll be fighting for his place there. But I think every player dreams of going to a team like Madrid. So I think, and they'd be willing to spend, the big bucks for him. So I think, probably Madrid.
George, will you be tempted for Norwich to get him back on loan?
Not on the basis of his performance during the loan spell. He really was terrible when he was a Norwich player. We can only dream now.
Got a bit better since then, though.
Oh yeah, well, just absolutely. From
just 36 goals better.
He scored a few against us as well. From one striker at a North London club to another, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has been linked with a move away from Arsenal. Football London have been reporting that there's a potential swap deal with him and Ousmane Dembele, the Barcelona winger. With Arsenal's European status, it's at risk at the moment. Do you think Aubameyang would be keen to go, Sam?
It's another contract issue with Arsenal. They seem to get themselves in these contract issues with their top players all the time. I think Aubameyang's entering his last year of his contract going into next season. So I think if he doesn't sign a new deal, Arsenal, I think they would take £30 million for him. I think that's what was reported by The Sun. And obviously that's nothing for a team like PSG. So, yeah, I don't think they want him to leave for free. So,
yeah, I think he's too good to be a free transfer kind of player, isn't he? He's still prolific, and he's the wrong side of going towards 30, but he's still got a lot to offer, especially for either PSG or I think is he also being linked to Juventus as well. I think Juventus have got a lot of flair players, and unless they got rid of one of theirs, maybe Aubameyang wouldn't see fit there.
I think PSG needs a Cavani replacement as well, because I think he's leaving at the end of the season. A lot of people are saying he's Miami, but if they want a second striker, because I think they've put in a bid for Icardi for about 44.5 million or something like that. Like you said, 30 million's nothing for PSG. And Arsenal, if I was them, I wouldn't mind looking to sell. He talks about him being over the age of 30. His pace is still very good, but it will decline eventually. So for me, £30 million and getting a new striker, maybe a younger striker through the door, I wouldn't be too fussed.
Aubameyang's been their best player by far though over the last couple of seasons. So I'd still be a bit worried as an Arsenal fan losing all those goals.
I'd rather lose the goals this season than get them for nothing next. That's my opinion.
They had a few stagnant years when Robin van Persie left as well, until they got Lacazette. And I think that if they are to lose him, they need to find that replacement not two seasons late. They need to get it now, and either like for like or a potent goal scorer that's just going to, take that responsibility on his shoulders like Van Persie did, unless he were injured. But with Cavani leaving, does that mean we're allowed to put Cavani to Newcastle in the title to get our Saudi Johnnies back watching?
Everyone under the sun has been linked to Newcastle in the last couple of weeks, even though the takeover's not even happened yet. So.
Including one player in particular, Xherdan Shaqiri. What do we think?
Yes,
I think he'll want to play regularly again. I think the Liverpool fans have taken to him since going there, and I think they like him as an option off the bench. But do players want to be an option off the bench? We saw him at Stoke, how good he could be in spells. I think when they went down, he went downhill with the fans. He didn't treat them right, but I think if he was given this opportunity, it'd be one he'd be keen to take.
It's been one of them with Shaqiri anyway. I think the whole era of the Stoke loner has really damaged the club over a period of time. Especially at the time, it was great and it was probably entertaining.
Bojan, Ibrahim Afellay,
yeah, Charlie Adam. It's I think Shaqiri's at a point in his career, and it's very short career, as we mention a lot of times when talking about players, is that he really needs to get first team action now. And even though he's won the Champions League and the Premier League with Liverpool, if he could go to Newcastle, and that's kind of the players that Newcastle should be looking to, the Shaqiri, the good players like that to build a good squad rather than getting the big headline. Like instead of going for Bale, for all the players that are the wrong side of 30 that are going to have one or two maybe good seasons. We don't know if it's going to work. Whereas Shaqiri's tried and tested, and I think he'd fit kind of, especially with Newcastle. It'd be a good replacement for Matt Ritchie. Not trying to
Newcastle
level, but
if Newcastle do get this investment, they are crying out for players going forward that can cause an ounce of danger. Apart from Alan St. Maximin last season, they had nothing. They had nothing going forward. I think a defender was their top scorer.
Yeah, they certainly need that player up front, which is gonna. I mean, even we haven't mentioned like Joelinton, where he has had a shocking season.
Doesn't deserve a mention.
He has had a shocking season, but you look at the way that Bruce Ball is, and it really does not flatter any sort of striker apart from Dwight Gale probably. It's shocking football where Joelinton really thrived over Hoffenheim's more attacking play, where they actually got balls into the box for him to feed on, and instead of Newcastle limiting him to probably 2 shots a game, at Hoffenheim he got 5, 6, and he were able to really take that commanding role up front.
Yeah, I think they need to spend money. If I was a Newcastle fan, I'd rather see an investment in the defence, because I think in the last 18 months they spent 70 million on their attacking three, and I think rather than it being a poor outfit for their attack, I do think, like you said, it's Bruce Ball, where they get better goal scoring out their defenders than their attackers.
I don't know.
So when was the last time they spent big money on a defender, or really any money on a defender? So for me, they need to improve that defence before they go for the attack.
One of the key components to the Newcastle is that if that takeover did go through, which it has seen a little bit of it's been a bit quiet, and there's been a little bit of doubt into it, unfortunately. But
there's always going to be doubt when Ashley's involved amongst Newcastle fans.
I think that's more the current climate, but I think one big thing they need to do is get a good director of football or somebody that'll oversee the transfer business to make sure that they don't just go and throw money everywhere, and they actually get signings that they crucially need, and to really build a team that that's not just 1 or 2 stars and just rest are filled in. They need a proper team to be able to challenge, and if spent right, they could easily drop into that top 8 conversation.
You might have seen I've got my notepad here ready. It is quiz time. I think I said a couple of weeks back that we'll end kind of this run and these scores on the weekend that the Premier League returns. We don't have a date for that yet, but I think we know that it is going to return. So we've maybe got, 4 or 5 more rounds left. It's very tight at the top. I should mention as well, last week, if you watched, we had a VAR review into one of the questions. My audio wasn't very good, and I didn't catch all of Sam's answer. After VAR has been consulted, I can confirm Sam did get that answer correct, so I've added his score on. So Harry's at the top with 27, Sam with 26, Devon with 23. That's after 11 rounds. Again this week, it went to a Twitter vote. The options were playoff finals. Last week was when the playoff finals should have been. La Liga, after it was announced that La Liga is set to return, I think it's the 12th of June, and also Premier League title-winning managers. It was a convincing win for the playoff finals. It didn't surprise me, to be honest. Everyone loves the playoffs, don't they? 75% of the vote was for the playoff finals. So that is what this week's quiz is on. Are we all set, guys?
Yeah.
How many questions is it?
I'm
7.
always ready.
I should say, we're recording the day after the poll went up. Did any of you do a bit of research? Were you tempted to? No.
I think the only research I've done in terms of playoff finals is crying this morning at the fact it's 4 years since we went the whole. So,
okay. Question number 1. This is another game which actually took place on this day. Who scored the only goal in the 2017-18 Championship playoff final between Fulham and Aston Villa? It's one of those games, I think, if you watched it, you definitely know this answer. Devon's confident. That is question number 1, and you've all got an answer down, so let's move on. Question number 2. Who were the winners of the 2018-19 League Two playoffs? So that's last year. It's just a year ago. And who did that team beat in the final at Wembley? There are 2 points available for this one. League Two final last year. Sam's team, Grimsby, of course, in League Two. Can he remember this outcome?
This game's been on about 500 times on Sky. Who did they play?
I think this is a fat 0 for me, I must say, on the second one. The second one, I can't think.
My mind's blank.
Give you a bit more time.
I can't think of who got promoted this season.
It's pretty tough, I suppose. But the fact it was only a year ago, I thought I had to get it in there.
To be fair, Harry, is it that time where Southampton are not remembering the League One days and they've got 2 big?
We're too good. That's the thing. See, I remember the Championship one, because I remember that because I know they all played at the same time, but I always watch it because it's on the weekend of my mum's birthday, and thankfully she likes football, so she's fine with it being on, and it's always a massive, well, hey, we can watch it. Whereas the League Two one, it's not as glamorous, so it's not something I always keep the sharpest eye on.
That's opposite for me at a festival.
Question 3: which 2 teams contested the first ever Championship playoff final to be played at the new Wembley? So you've got to think of the year here. What year would it have been? And there's 2 points available. Which 2 teams contested that game?
No, and this is a pure guess. Is this 2 points as well?
That's quite tough, I suppose.
Is that 2 points on offer as well?
Yeah, that's 2 points. Yeah.
If it is the answer that I've wrote down, do I have permission to put the goal on and celebrate in my front room or not?
Okay. I'm going to move on to question number 4 as you guys finish your answers. During the 2010s, so there were 10 finals, 2 teams each won the League One playoffs on 2 occasions. So 2 teams, they both won promotion to the Championship via the playoffs on 2 occasions in that time. Can you name them? There are 2 points available.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
So during the 2010s, 2 teams each won the League One playoffs on 2 occasions.
2 teams each one.
Should I go safe or should I chuck one out there?
I think I definitely know one.
Because I want to say one, but I don't know if they did it through the playoffs or if they just went straight there.
So they won promotion to the Championship. Then they got relegated at some point. Then they came back up. That's how it works, obviously, because how else?
It's another yo-yo club.
I'd say Portsmouth, but they're just stuck in League One, so I can rule them out straight away.
Okay, I will move on.
Gooders won't be happy.
If it's the team that I've not written down, I'm going to be absolutely furious.
Which player scored a hat-trick for Swansea in their 4-2 Championship playoff final win over Reading in 2011?
I think it's between two. Potentially
Devin,
two.
You're looking like you might be able to claw this back. I think you probably...
I didn't catch the first part of that again.
Oh, unlucky. You can't. There's no repeats.
Okay, Sam, which player scored a hat-trick for Swansea in their 4-2 playoff final win over Reading in 2011?
Okay.
Oh, no, it could be the other.
I think I've got this one.
I can't.
I don't know.
Oh.
Like I said, it's between one or two players in my head, and if it's not, then it's just like...
Okay, let's go through these answers. 8 points up for grabs in total today. Question number 1. Who scored the only goal in the 2017-18 Championship playoff final between Fulham and Aston Villa? Harry, what's your answer?
I am hoping it is Tom Kearney.
Gone with Tom Kearney. Sam, what have you written down for this one?
I also went Tom Kearney.
Tom Kearney for Sam. And Devon?
Tom Kearney.
Kearney. And you're all off the mark. It was, of course, Tom Kearney. Lovely little finish on that day. Question number 2. Last year's League Two playoffs. Who were the winners and who did they beat in the final at Wembley? Devon, I'll start with you on this one.
I think it were Tranmere Rovers 1, Exeter City 0.
You've gone with Tranmere and Exeter. Okay. Sam, what have you said for this answer?
I only put MK Dons.
You've got MK Dons. Okay. And Harry, what
sure.
This
No idea. So I just put Blackpool and Shrewsbury because I can think.
Okay. Devon, you said Tranmere and Exeter for this one. You were correct with Tranmere. They didn't beat Exeter. They beat Newport County in the final. So you get 1 point because there were 2 points available.
You should have done that, Mr. Paddy. Is it Hammond?
Yeah.
Whatever. Disgrace to him.
Question number 3. Which two teams contested the first ever Championship playoff final to be played at the new Wembley? Sam, I'll start with you on this one.
Complete guess. I said Ipswich versus Preston.
Ipswich versus Preston. Okay, Harry, on to you.
I put Swindon and Blackburn. I wasn't too sure, so I went Swindon and Blackburn.
And Devon, what have you said?
I think it's Sheffield United 0, Burnley 1, Wade Elliott volley.
Sheffield United 0.
I know that.
This is Sheffield United.
Oh, wait.
That game, Devon, was, I believe, in
after
2008, was it? Or maybe even the year after. This game was actually in 2007.
No, you know way too much about your rivals, Devon.
It was between Derby County and West Bromwich Albion.
Yeah, no, I didn't know
that. Derby winning it 1-0 on the day, so no points for that one.
It's the only playoff final.
Oh, because they beat us in the semis. Oh, I should have known that. I should have known that.
Question 4. During the 2010s, 2 teams each won the League One playoffs on 2 occasions. Can you name them? Harry, I'll start with you on this one.
I went Barnsley and Rotherham because I know they are.
Okay.
Yo-yoers.
Devon, on to you for this one.
I was going to go for Barnsley, but I've gone for Rotherham and Millwall.
Rotherham.
I was thinking Millwall. I was either them or Rotherham.
And Sam, your answers for this one?
I also said Rotherham. I said Sheffield United as well.
Rotherham and Sheffield United.
They lost in 3, I think.
You all said Rotherham. One of you got it correct with the second one, so you get 2 points. And it's Devon. This is clear round. the round for you, Devon. Millwall did it in 2010 and 2017, and Rotherham in 2014.
I know it were Rotherham because my mate.
Oh.
To be fair, I would have. It was either Rotherham or Millwall for me, so I would have only got one either way. So I'm not too fussed.
The Millwall one was tough because their win was back in 2010. But yeah, that was the answer. Finally, question 5. Which player scored a hat-trick for Swansea in their 4-2 playoff final win over Reading in 2011? Sam, what's your answer for this one?
I said Scott Sinclair.
Scott Sinclair, you went with. Harry, what have you said?
I went with Wayne Routledge.
Wayne Routledge, okay. Sure. And Devon?
I were between Danny Graham and Scott Sinclair, and I've gone for Scott Sinclair because
you went with Scott Sinclair.
He was on a madness that day, but I can't remember if he scored a hat-trick.
I can tell you that it was indeed Scott Sinclair.
I completely forgot about that, lads. That's frustrating.
Oh,
good end to the quiz.
Which means I have to say is very tight at the top. Devon, an impressive score, 5 out of 8 today. That's very good. So let me just tally.
I predicted that Devon would surge back in this one.
Blimey, it is tight. Very exciting. Devon, you're now on 28 points.
Oh, I've really cleared some ground in since first.
Sam's on 29, and Harry's also on 29.
Oh,
so it's a 3-way tie.
To play for.
And that's after 12 rounds. So as we know, we'll carry it on until the Premier League returns. We'll try something different.
I think we got to do like a 10-pointer for the last one.
Maybe we do. As always, please send in if you played along with that one. Let us know how you got on. It was maybe a varying round. It's a good test of your knowledge, playoff finals, because they're memorable days. And I quite enjoyed making that one, I must admit. That is all for this week's podcast. We hope you've enjoyed watching or listening. As always, you can find us on Twitter at @_Fourmation or on Facebook. We're on Facebook too. We'll post all our content on there. Have we got anything else to add, guys? What we think of the weekend?
No, it's going to be another exciting round of Bundesliga fixtures. I would suggest, and I'll put it in the description, if you enjoyed our preview and analysis of Dortmund versus Bayern, check out Sam Allen's Vavel Bundesliga piece. He's done a warm down of the game. It's very good, so check it out. Other than that, from promoting our other things, check out the Works Up Guardian.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of promotion. So follow us on all the socials. Do you reckon, Devon, we can put our Twitter links or something in the description or something like that? I don't know. Maybe you can. If you're watching, then it might be in the comments. I don't know. Have a look. But anyway, that's all from us, and we will see you next week. Ta-ra.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.